I'm just saying that's the most.
This is Mackenzie Allen reporting for KBVR just outside of the MU Lounge, where very shortly we will bring you coverage of the ASOSU impeachment trial for President Tonga Hopoi. This will be the first impeachment trial at Oregon State University, and Tonga was voted to be impeached by the House of Representatives recently, and in order to be found guilty, the Senate, acting as the jury, will need to find her guilty with a supermajority of 2/3. In her absence, President Hopoi has been replaced by acting President Soka Eth, who has now become the acting ASOSU president from his position of vice president of ASOSU.
Like, I really hope it. Oh, God. I wonder if
Google image
I just need this whole road to go
Excuse
back.
me. All rise for the Honorable Chairman Whitaker.
You may be seated. Now we call this trial to order. Okay. Do we have the plaintiff and the defendant here?
Yes, Your Honor.
President.
Good. Okay. So if we could have the vice chair read brief description of the court procedure and hearing rules. My bad. We're gonna have the. It's not on. I thought we had these turned on.
Just tap it. They'll figure it out.
Hello. All right, we're gonna have the vice chair briefly read the court procedures and hearing rules. Can everyone hear me decently well?
It's full all the way to the back.
Okay.
You should try using the mic.
Is the mic working yet?
Try that one.
Hello?
There we go.
So I will be reading a brief statement on the proceedings of the trial. So for evidence, factual allegations are not evidence. Factual allegations should be proved or disproved through the introduction of evidence. Admissible evidence is evidence deemed to be germane by the Judicial Council and aids in the proof or disproof of factual allegations. Hearsay evidence is inadmissible. Objections may be raised by the plaintiff, defendant, or a judicial counselor. Objections may only be raised to challenge the admissibility or relevance of evidence. Objections may be overruled by a simple majority vote of the Judicial Council. On the timeline for this trial, oral arguments shall take the following order of progression of presentation of evidence as follows: opening statements, presentation of evidence by the plaintiff, cross-examination of the plaintiff by the defendant, presentation of evidence by the defendant, cross-examination of the defendant by the plaintiff, examination of the evidence by the counsel, and closing statements. Each party shall have 3 minutes to present their opening statement. Each party shall have 20 minutes to present evidence and testimony. Each party shall have 10 minutes to cross-examine the opposing party. Each party shall have 3 minutes to present their closing statements. The plaintiff shall present his or her opening and closing statements before the defendant.
I will now make a statement of the charges brought against the defendant. She is here on trial for a violation of her, or dereliction of her duties as president of ASOSU.
Your Honor, can you please repeat with my name?
M. Tonga Hopoi.
Thank you.
And also the remedy sought by the plaintiff is a formal censure issued by the Senate. Do both parties agree to the charges brought? Are there any objections?
I do, Your Honor.
Please present them. Or
What was that?
please state them.
The charges or the sought remedies?
Your problems with, did you have an issue with the charges brought or the?
No, I don't, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Okay, we will now begin the opening statements. The first opening statement will be by the plaintiff, and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Drew Hatlin. I'm the Speaker of the House representing the ASOSU House of Representatives. On October 12th, 2011, the ASOSU House of Representatives voted to bring the articles of impeachment against 2011-2012 ASOSU President M. Tonga Hopoi. This decision was made after the House heard evidence of the President being derelict in her duties. As stated in the articles of impeachment, her conduct was not executed to the best of her ability, upholding the provisions of the Constitution and such acts. By failing to attend the OSA board meetings, she was in dereliction of her duties as ASOSU president. This is not a charge brought up for personal vendetta or for any kind of gain. This is simply a question of whether or not the Constitution and the statutes were violated and whether or not M. Tonga Hopoi, ASOSU president, was or was not derelict in her duties. I think you will find with the evidence that I will bring forward from the House of Representatives that the president was derelict in her duties by not attending the stated OSA meetings throughout this summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam President, would you like to present your opening statement?
Yes, thank you. I also have a question of how will I know the 3 minutes is up? Will you signal or?
You can give her a 30-second signal.
Okay, thank
You'll
you.
have 30 seconds. He'll signal.
There's 30 seconds or 3 minutes?
You have 3 minutes and 30 seconds before your 3 minutes up. Nick, Counselor Malos will signal you.
So 30 seconds warning?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to thank you for your time, members of the court, gallery in attendance, and reciting Judge Whitaker for this time tonight for me to share my piece and be heard respectively. So thank you for that. I have learned my lesson to understand my presidential duties in relation to the other two branches within the ASOSU. From October 12th, that was made clear that I did not know clearly the duties outlined of how to work with the two branches. And so for that, I have apologized. I have written a public statement for my apology to the students of Oregon State in October 19th, Daily Barometer, with the guest column titled, A President's Perspective. Now with that said, moving forward, I am very poignant that these are articles of impeachment. So the precedents of impeachment within the Associate Students of Oregon State University in recent years is President Kristen Downey in her dereliction of duties, as the speaker has been coining, and also President Dan McCarthy in his public violation of state law with a DUI. Now, those are the only two impeachments that have precedent over me as it currently sits. Now, today they want to impeach me on these articles, violating statutes in comparison to dereliction of duties where President Downey was not here for the majority of summer. She was off in DC doing an internship. and then Dan McCarthy violating state law, which is held higher within Oregon State University, respectively, as its state law. And so those two were both impeached, met by the Senate when it was used to be the graduate Senate. They were met and they were questioned. They were given respect to be questioned. Now I sit before you here today. I apologize for members of the gallery for the inconvenience. I wish I could face you all. But I sit before you here today with a claim for the inconsistency to follow the Constitution within my presidential duties. And I have owned up to it. I have publicly said what I understand, and I've accepted it. Now I ask you today, with the two impeachments that hold precedent over this impeachment of the ASOSU, what makes me different that I was not held to the same respect? And I ask that today for the dismissal of all charges brought against me by the ASOSU House, by the ASOSU Third House, brought against me and my branch. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now have a presentation of the evidence by the plaintiff.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. I provided you all with evidence packet submitted on Saturday at 6:59 p.m. These include the first piece of evidence, which is the actual bill from the House of Representatives that called for the articles of impeachment, followed by the second piece of evidence, which is the press release from the Office of the President dated on July 14th, 2011, releasing us from our organization with the Oregon Student Association. The third piece of evidence is an attendance records of our OSA Board of Directors meeting held June 16th. The fourth piece of evidence is from our Board of Directors meeting for OSA from August 28th, 2011. And the fifth piece of evidence, finally, is the third Board of Directors meeting held throughout the summer, dated October 1st, 2011. As you will see in the last three pieces of evidence, OSU is the only school not represented in the OUS system. This, you will find a direct conflict with the ASOSU statutes that find, or that declare that the ASOSU president and the proxy of government relations would be required to be in attendance at these meetings. Now relating back to the second piece of evidence, the decision to remove ourselves from OSA. I'll go ahead and read this out loud for you for its brevity. The Associated Students of Oregon State University, Office of the President for immediate release, July 14th, 2011. On July 5th, 2011, an executive decision was passed declaring that the Associated Students of Oregon State University would no longer be a part of the Oregon Student Association and will no longer be hosting the 11th annual Oregon Students of Color Coalition Conference. This decision was arrived upon in an effort to better focus on the directives of the 2011-2012 ASOSU administration on campus and within the university. For further information, please contact ASOSU administration, asosu@oregonstate.edu. This piece of evidence right here, this press release, was the first cause of concern for the House of Representatives. It says that it's set for immediate release, yet it was never sent to students. It wasn't sent to staff. It was not sent to the other branches of Congress to inform folks of ASOSU or the student body that this decision was made. This decision impacts every student at Oregon State University, as they have already been allocated from their student fees that we pay dues to this organization. by removing us from this organization without considering, or without considerations from the legislative branch, it created an immediate conflict of interest and conflict within the Constitution and statutes of ASOSU. It could have been made possible through working with the legislative branch to remove these duties from the presidency's obligations if there was some sort of bilateral communication or bilateral work that could have happened as soon as the school year started. If you look at the charges brought forth by the ASOSU House of Representatives, I want to go ahead and read from the second page the entirety of the charges brought forth. And I'm going to quote from the second page. In her conduct, while president of the Associated Students of Oregon State University, M. Tonga Hopoi, in violation of her constitutional oath, faithfully to execute the office of president of the Associated Students of Oregon State University, and, to the best of her ability, uphold and execute the provisions of the Constitution and such acts as may be passed according to those provisions. And in violation of her constitutional duty to take care of the laws that be faithfully executed, has willfully corrupted and manipulated the executive powers of her high office. As of June 16, 2011, M. Tonga Hopoi has refused to send representation to the Oregon Student Association Board of Directors as delineated in her duty in the statutes of the Associated Students of Oregon State University, found in Title III, Section 3, Letter A, Subsection 2, as well as Title III, Section 3, Letter C of the statutes. As of October 1st, 2011, M. Tonga Hopoi will have missed 3 meetings of the Board of Directors for the Oregon Students Association. On July 14th, 2011, M. Tonga Hopoi, as the leader for the executive branch, issued a statement stating that the ASOSU will no longer be members of the Oregon Student Association, in which this act has circumvented all legislative requirements as outlined in the provisions of the Constitution and such acts of the Associated Students of Oregon State University. These actions and decision-making by M. Tonga Hopoi has had the following effects. 1, Congress was not involved in the decision-making in removing the ASOSU from the Oregon Student Association. 2, the ASOSU was not involved in the decision-making process in removing the ASOSU from the Oregon Students Association. 3, the ASOSU was not formally notified that they had been removed from the Oregon Student Association. 4, the ASOSU currently has no standing permanent representation, I repeat, permanent representation in the Capitol for the state of Oregon, a role fulfilled by the Oregon Student Association as a lobbying organization. 5, the ASOSU currently has, the ASOSU has currently no standing relationship with the United States Student Association that was formally provided through the Oregon Student Association, additionally damaging ASOSU's reputation on the federal level. 6, the relationship between the Associated Students of Oregon State University and the Oregon Student Association may have been damaged and will require mending. 7, the ASOSU has been charged a fee of $1.15 per student per term for fall membership dues to the Oregon Student Association, totaling $75,745, duly approved by the Student Incidental Fees and the ASOSU Congress, which, in violation of the budgetary authority of the House Ways and Means Committee, has not been dispersed yet to the Oregon Student Association, nor reallocated in a right and proper manner by the Ways and Means Committee. Finally, in doing this, M. Tonga Hopoi has undermined the integrity of her office, has brought disrepute on the presidency, has betrayed her trust as president, and has acted in a manner subversive to the rule of law and justice to manifest injury of the people of the Associated Students of Oregon State University. It is here where the House found M. Tonga Hopoi by such conduct impeached. These actions, included with a lack of communication really undermine the process that we have here at Oregon State University. Whether or not removing ASOSU from OSA was a good decision or might be heralded by the student population as a whole is not what we have to question here today. It is the manner and conduct in which the process was taken to remove us from the organization. By working unilaterally and not working with her partners in ASOSU, Tonga has removed the checks and balances that are so valued by ASOSU. It's not that we have not heard an apology, because yes, there was a formal and public apology issued by the president. We haven't seen any sort of remorse for the fact that she has bypassed these processes that we hold dear. So this isn't a decision about whether or not she's learned her lesson. This isn't a decision that should be held in comparison to precedents of presidents that have been impeached in the past. This is a matter of whether or not Tonga Hopoi has been derelict in her duties by missing those 3 OSA board meetings and not, to the best of her ability, represented the students of Oregon State University. We all value the process in which our student fee dollars get allocated each year. We have one of the strongest student governments and strongest fee processes in the state and in the nation. By completely withdrawing ourselves from OSA without proper communication, these processes have been undermined and completely ignored. So it is my hope that the Senate find the president guilty and be convicted of these charges of impeachment. And further, the House recommendation is to bring forth some sort of formal censure that will reprimand her for her actions, because I believe she may or may not have learned her lesson.
Excuse me, could you just refrain it to presentation of evidence and not arguments?
Please.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Just present the evidence, any evidence you have. You will have time for closing arguments or closing statement.
Okay, thank you. Right, so can I follow with the sanctions proposed by the House, or is that for a later time?
What's the time, Your Honor?
What's
11:13.
11:13?
Okay, thank you.
I don't believe that is really evidence in the case as far as deciding the guilt or innocence.
Okay.
In this.
So I guess in closing, I'd just like to revert back to the last 3 pieces of evidence, evidence 3, 4, and 5. And if you could possibly look over those names, the abbreviated schools, and if you can find anywhere on there where it says OSU, Tonga Hopoi, or Ravi Patel, please let me know. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The defense will now have 10 minutes to cross-examine the evidence presented.
Oh, okay.
It's 10 minutes for cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. So listening to the claims made against me, I want to point out that there were some that were substantial, that has proof, which is the Congress was not involved. That was clear. The ASOSU was not involved in the ASOSU. It should be the students of Oregon State was not involved in the decisions of ASOSU. But there are speculation when it comes to the ASOSU has no standing in Salem if not for OSA. We have a government affairs team that we have created ourselves here at ASOSU because OSA was lacking in what we needed. So we created our own. That's why we have such a strong government relations team working for us in Salem. And then we have the claim for has no current standing with the United States Student Association as provided by OSA. I am a former board member of the National Asian Pacific Association Student Coalition. I have standing with USSA. I traveled to board meetings all last year fulfilling the students' duties at the Capitol. And then we also have the Washington, D.C. trip that government affairs team goes on every May. And then I want to clarify on what the speaker has in terms of what counts as remorse. I would need to know what counts as remorse because I have apologized. And I stood that night when I was being disrespected and impeached. I stood there for you all. But I need to know what he counts as remorse because that today can probably clarify what I should be doing to gain the respect, to gain back the integrity of the organization. Let me know what I need to do and I will be there 110% as I have been June 1st, 2011. Thank you.
The defense will now have 20 minutes. Well, does the defense have any evidence for presentation?
I do, and so I apologize. I wasn't made aware that we were to submit evidence. I thought just witness affidavits were needed beforehand.
Yes, this is a new process for everyone. So
okay. Can I present to you evidence? Enter evidence right now.
If
it's not a witness affidavit.
Objection. I'd like to at least see it beforehand. The fact that it's been brought right before the trial, I don't appreciate.
It should be for your honors. You.
We'd like to take a moment and discuss this.
Okay, thank you.
This is Mackenzie Allen reporting for KBVR. I am currently right outside the MU Lounge where the trial for impeached ASOSU President Tonga Hopoi is taking place. And currently, President Hopoi is meeting with both the judge and the plaintiff to discuss the legality of being allowed to present further evidence at this point in the trial, rather than having already presented it before the trial proceedings took place. We will take you right back to the trial as soon as it resumes.
Okay, so the procedure now, since there's new evidence to be presented, the Senate will be given 5 minutes to look over the new evidence, and we'll then perform a roll call vote. And if there's a 2/3 majority in favor of submission of the evidence, it will be. The evidence will be admitted. So as soon as we have.
I have a question. So the discourse from the speaker, does that mean I was supposed to see his evidence? Because I never did. So I don't know why he's up in arms if I never saw his evidence, or what's going on.
May I, Your Honor?
You may.
72 hours before the court proceedings, I emailed you a copy of everything, and I also...
To my own id, because I'm suspended from duty, so I'm not to use my ASOSU account.
Can I please finish? Also, in your Snell 149 mailbox that you can come in any time with your door code to receive.
If I'm suspended from my duties, Your Honor, I am not to be in the workspace, which is Snell 149.
I don't believe at any point are you suspended from any buildings on campus due to this articles of impeachment.
That's your interpretation of what I should be doing, but the duties have outlined Snell 149.
This will not be an argument between you two.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We can't object. We can't. No. So we'll give more her. No, we can't. Yeah, we can vote on the evidence can be admitted, because we can't object to the proceedings.
So the current remedy sought is for both parties to be presented evidence. So as soon as we get copies made, both parties will be given evidence, because yes.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Are we on recess while we wait? Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask for clarification?
Yes.
So are we going to take a roll call vote as to whether or not the evidence will be admissible, or are we going to wait till all the copies are made and we sit here to take that roll call vote?
The Senate must view the evidence before they can decide whether the evidence is admissible or not.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
The court will recess until photocopies are made.
Okay, yeah. Can we chat? This is Mackenzie Allen reporting outside of the ASOSU trial of impeached President Tonga Hopoi, and there currently seems to be some confusion over the required procedure for submitting evidence, and as of such, the judge has ordered a recess until copies can be made of each side's evidence for that to be distributed to each side and also to the Senate acting as a jury. We will bring you back to live coverage of this event as soon as the recess ends and it resumes.
Yep, I do. What is it? I have it right here.
This is Mackenzie Allen again, outside of the ASOSU impeachment trial, and copies of both parties' evidence have been made available to the Senate acting as the jury, and the judge has now allowed 10 minutes for the jury to review that evidence before the trial proceeds. We will take you back to the trial as soon as it reconvenes.
Order. The Senate has deemed admissible the letter to the editor by the defendant, budgets, and email correspondence that have been submitted. So, and I would also like to remind both parties to please do not speak to the jury. The defendant will now have 20 minutes to present evidence and testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to have it in record that the Speaker of the House, during recess for when the Senate should be overlooking my evidence, if it's admissible or not, made his way to the Senate section and was conversing with senators.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So moving on, looking at the defense, I have my formal public apology written out for the senator's accessibility in understanding where I've come to be here today. Moving on, then we have a statement created by members of the executive cabinet upon a decision to not be a part of OSA in the summer.
What is your objection?
Was this part of the admissible evidence?
What was the evidence that is being presented?
It is the page after the president's perspective with the, it's all one piece. It's the cabinet's decision with the financial records.
Could you please hold up the piece of evidence that you're
It's
advising
the sheet right after the, yes. It's
This one here.
It's all one piece with the financial records.
That was deemed inadmissible.
Technically, that's part of the budget.
It's part of the budget.
This part of the budget?
Yes.
That is part of the budget.
Then
Either that or you have a
sorry,
loose budget.
Sorry, yes, it is admissible, sorry.
Thank you.
The objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. So looking at the piece created from the executive branch, I wanted to be clear, as the night of my impeachment, there was a clear, direct statement made by members of the House that the decision was made unilaterally. So I'm asking for clarification on what is a unilateral decision, as this decision was made by executive members who attended the OSA staff, and then thus approved at cabinet meeting by myself.
That can be brought up during the cross-examination of the evidence. So we will have the plaintiff present.
You're asking for clarification from Hatlin, correct?
From the impeachment hearing, that they use the word unilateral.
That can be addressed during cross-examination.
Okay, thank you. Moving into the same piece, I wanted to bring up points that failed to make the record when it came to the preparations made by the House, which is the budget. Now, as president of the ASOSU, I come into the Association of Students of Oregon State with whatever budget the previous administration had. The new monies for the administration flows in around this week. This is when the new monies roll in. So when I stepped into office, June 1st, 2011, ASOSU was in debt $58,000 for travel. That is where this piece lays. That is why I've provided financial budgets for you. From the previous Struthers administration, ASOSU was in debt $58,000 in travel. Now, a claim made in terms of my impeachment for the articles was that we were unable to make OSA meetings in the summer. Now, how do you make meetings traveling with $58,000 in debt and new money doesn't roll in until the first week of November? I had to make difficult choices. Then we're moving on to the piece from the Barometer article about the BCC event answers impeachment questions. From this piece, I want to draw attention to...
Objection. I don't believe this evidence was admissible. I apologize for the interruption.
This evidence was deemed inadmissible. That evidence is inadmissible. The objection is sustained.
Okay. As we move forward, when I say the title, can you raise your hand if it's inadmissible? So I can know. Thank you. Were any of the articles for the precedent of President Downey and President MacArthur?
None of those were, although all that evidence was inadmissible, deemed inadmissible, sorry.
Okay. So we're moving forward to all of the email transactions were admissible?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, what's the first one? So the first one, I apologize to the student. I should have marked out their name for their anonymity, but this is an email correspondence dating to August 1st that I was contacted by MU Reservations that the speaker has not booked any House meetings for this year. And let me remind you, this is August 1st. The reason why I bring this up is because he is attacking my inability to perform my duties.
Objection. There's no personal vendetta here.
There wasn't.
Please direct your comments towards me, not the opposing party.
Objection. There was insinuation of a vendetta that I am attacking a personal character, whereas I am just representing the House of Representatives.
The objection will be sustained. Please refrain from insinuating anything like that.
I was clear it was presidential duties. That is why we're here today in terms of my presidential duties. That is a statement I made just to reiterate. And then moving forward, it's just more email interactions between the President of the Senate. Is it fine to move forward, Your Honor, or do you need?
Yes, it's
Okay.
fine.
So moving on, this is the email correspondence August 23rd from the President of the Senate to Dr. Larry Roper, a Vice Provost of Student Affairs, founder of the Shared Governance at Oregon State University, about meeting with the Speaker himself as well as the Senate Pro Temp on ways to representation, structure, leadership, mission, and purpose for Congress. August 23rd, no reply was made until then. I believe no reply has ever been made since. And then lastly, we have the executive order, for which I believe is the stemming root for the move of House to impeach me. This order,
Objection, that's hearsay.
I apologize.
Please restate the objection.
The evidence provided was hearsay. She insinuated intentions again.
Ask her to defend. She can defend her position. She can explain it.
Please explain.
So I apologize for that. Can we move forward?
I would appreciate a clarification.
To the objection, you are allowed to have your clarification on why that should be upheld, and then Drew will have one more chance to refute.
Well, looking at when we came into office, the Speaker was not there. And then I ordered an executive order on behalf of the Office of the President, which is limiting because I can only represent the executive branch. So I only did what I could for him to come back into office. And so.
And anything else to say?
I guess my question of clarification would be for insinuating that this was a start of a process for impeachment which was brought forth from the House, not from myself.
Your ruling.
I'm not sure. I apologize if it came off that way.
Sustained. Continue.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. And so this executive order, as we all know, I am new to ASOSU, especially Office of the President. So I was trying to find a way to bring the Speaker of the House into the ASOSU to hold his office hours so that I can get some congressional support. When you look at my position, I am elected as the student voice. I'm not elected as a congressional side of the ASOSU. So that is not my intention to know fully the extent of the Constitution or the statutes. Other positions within the elected realm are ASOSU Speaker of the House. And so the executive order was conveyed June 27th. If I can read that. Okay, yes. Thank you. Email was sent from my email account, ASOSU President, to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, as well as ONID for the individual. The subject was ASOSU Executive Order. Dear Speaker of the House, Andrew James Hatlin, in ASOSU Statutes Title II, Section 2C2, the Speaker of the House shall be required to hold 20 office hours a week, excluding finals week. As deemed in ASOSU statutes, your position is to hold 20 office hours a week, excluding finals week. Being that these positions are based on academic year, unless stated otherwise, you're not expected to work in the summer. With that said, you have not breached ASOSU statutes by not holding office hours from June 1st, 2011, sorry, that was a typo, to June 27th, 2011, and will be removed from summer payroll. As deemed in ASOSU Constitution, bylaws, and statutes, the position of the ASOSU Speaker of the House does not require a physical office space. Due to the shortage of physical office space in Snell Hall 149 and the expansion of the ASOSU with support and professional staff, there was a request for the office space that the House of Representatives currently occupies. Due to the sparse usage of the physical office space during work hours, I, as ASOSU Madam President, have made the executive order to assemble Congress into one space for efficiency and practicality of ASOSU duties in current administration's order for transparency, responsibility, and accountability. In respect, I will grant a Haven 24 hours to pose opposition to the executive order. If there is no objection, please return the office key for the space by June 29th at 12 p.m. to the Student Leadership Info Desk, Snell Hall 149. Sincerely, Tonga. And so I wanted to point that out because I was not sure how to get him to come into office to hold any hours. And so I did what I could within my executive powers, and I held an executive order. It clearly states that we are not obligated to hold, the position for us to hold hours is very vague. It just says not to hold 20 office hours a week excluding finals week. Now that's open to interpretation, whether they show up or not. When it came to June 1st, there was 3 elected officials for the ASOSU. Speaker of the House, myself as president, and then the vice president. 2 of the 3 showed up June 1st. Working 40 hours a week, all the way until September 26th when school started, when we moved into 20 hours a week. Now, I don't want to be something that is personal, as I don't know how his summer was, so I want to stay away from that, but I just ask for some clarification that if we're to follow order, everyone should follow order. If I'm held to justice and to right, everyone should be following justice and right from day one. You set precedent day one. So that is why I'm asking with this piece of evidence, as well as furthermore, there's more correspondence between us. I don't know how much, I'm not comfortable reading further as it is just a poor light on the individual. And so this is just for the senators and for the jury to take in that throughout our correspondence, he then showed up Tuesday for a meeting, which was the next day. The first time I saw him in the office was after I placed the executive order. I want to read out the last sentence, which said, "We honor the ASOSU by utilizing our office hours and helping all students find their way to success." Can I get a time? 14 and a half, thank you. The president's perspective is just my letter of apology for the students for not knowing the Constitution and the statutes to the best of my ability. If we can go back to the first piece of evidence, please. And so that is my apology for not knowing what I should have been accounted for all throughout the summer. But I want to point out that if the position that the students have elected to come and serve as a congressional head throughout the summer is not there, how am I to know what to do if they're not there? This is a team effort. I am the student voice. That's what I've been elected to do. And then others were elected as congressional heads to know how to navigate procedure within the statutes. Now, if that person is not there, not fulfilling their duties as outlined within the emails, correspondence from August 1st and then August 23rd, I fail to see how it is admissible for the charges against my office as president today of a failure to perform my duties when there is a clear failure all throughout the summer for the congressional.
Please refrain from the Speaker of the House is not on trial here.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, I apologize. And so with that all said, that is where my driving force came from, with the evidence, and also to set precedent that when you impeach a president, it is not impeaching one person. You are impeaching the voters of the president. You are impeaching a fellow classmate. And so thank you.
The plaintiff will now have 10 minutes to cross-examine the evidence.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. I'd first like to examine the president's perspective. This came after the impeachment trial, which, after speaking with several representatives, if this would have come out in the first week, the second week, there would be no need for this trial. If the decision had been made clearly and had been articulated, as to what the reasoning behind it were, there might not be any need for this sort of a trial. There could have been working together to amend the statutes to remove that from the presidential duty to attend these board of director meetings. So I would like to congratulate and thank the president for writing this, because it was very well received by the student body, by the House of Representatives and myself. So thank you. Moving forward, I would like to address the second piece of evidence that was admissible, the letter about the decision to pull out of OSA. To clarify the question that was asked before, the unilateral decision, which is a decision made by one party, as opposed to a multilateral or bilateral decision where it would include more than one party, this was an executive decision to pull out of OSA. This was not a joint decision. This was not a cooperative effort. This was made by the executive branch internally. And this is a decision that should have been made between multiple branches of ASOSU. And to add in about the budget and the traveling expenses, the reason that ASOSU was in debt was because part of ASOSU's past administration had attended several USSA meetings.
I object. This is hearsay.
Clarification, please.
Please clarify the objection, yes.
This is hearsay in terms of what he believes the budget is, but in terms of skills and people who manage the budget, it is clear that there was an overlaps in the travel. But now there's going to be an interpretation of what that overlaps was. And so I do not feel that is fair, as the member was not part of the executive cabinet or executive branch of past administration. There is no grounds.
If I may.
You can't make assumptions about the evidence.
Thank you.
Objection sustained.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay, I was going to say we were part of this decision-making process for the $58,000 that was in debt. So I actually do have some experience and knowledge of this.
Speculation.
There's no evidence that has been submitted
Thank
to
you.
back up this claim.
Okay, so am I not allowed to cross-examine this budget whatsoever then? Since I'm not a deemed expert?
You are, but you have to stick to, unless you have evidence to present against it, you have
Sorry,
to...
what was that?
Unless you have evidence to present against or to clarify your assumptions, which are assumptions right now.
Yep.
You have to stick to what's there. If you had evidence that showed, obviously you were part of it, but evidence would need to be submitted in order to...
So can I speak to the debt and...
You can speak to it, but if you were to add additional things...
Okay.
You can speak to it, but you can't make
I
assumptions.
can't explain the debt and why it was there?
No.
I'm sorry, I was asking the honor.
You can only stick to the issue at hand. You cannot bring in anything that hasn't been submitted as evidence so far.
Okay, so I can't retort that. Thank you. Moving on, since this is the first time I've seen this. Oh, goodness. All right, moving on to I guess it would be the third admissible evidence about the room reservations between the reservations here at MU and Tonga herself. The reservations had not been made because I'd been in conversations with Soko Eith, the Vice President and President of the Senate.
I object. Speculation again.
I'm not allowed to cross-examine?
Sustain.
I don't know how you want me to proceed if I can't cross-examine the evidence.
You need evidence.
Tonga,
I'm
please
sorry.
address all things towards me.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Please continue. Any further cross-examination?
Can I continue with what I was saying, or was the objection sustained?
The objection was sustained.
Okay. So as clarification, am I allowed to retort any of this evidence that was brought against my own personal character, or is that completely inadmissible as this evidence should be?
Yes, you may. You're not on trial here.
Thank you for
just
clarifying that.
Please do not make any assumptions towards the evidence.
Okay. As I was part of the evidence, am I allowed to explain it?
Yes.
Okay. So room reservations, can I, please interrupt me if I'm going to. Room reservations were made for both the Senate and the House of Representatives by myself outside of my duties to reserve rooms for the Senate. So as far as not being able to contact me, I've actually made reservations through Mia. We've worked jointly to make sure Senate and the House has space to meet. Moving on, I guess. The fourth piece of evidence, this is actually the first I've seen of this email. And actually, Soko, Ethan, and I did meet with Larry Roper to discuss the future of Congress and including more students as representatives in Congress, which is why we heard the bill.
Objection, speculation again. There's no evidence for the claim.
Objection overruled.
So, as Speaker of the House, Drew was, he was the budgetary authority on last year's decisions, and as such, he should be allowed to testify as an expert witness, so his testimony should be allowable.
The testimony wasn't submitted 72 hours in advance. If you'd like to try, you would like to submit an affidavit right now to and see. If he would like to submit his testimony right now for to review by the Senate to deem if it was admissible or not, he may.
Which way would you like me to do that, Your Honor?
So, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think clarification should be made. He's the plaintiff, he's not a witness, so his testimony is direct, and he should be allowed to without having submitted evidence, since it's his testimony.
We'll have the Senate perform a vote on whether the testimony will be accepted or not. We'll go ahead and allow the testimony. After we will have the Senate vote on it, we will perform just a 2/3 vote. If we can have all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Abstaining?
Aye.
The motion passes. You may present your testimony.
So if this is to do with the budget, correct? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
So to speak to this negative $58,000, $561.72, this debt was incurred through the administration, the prior administration, for costs of traveling to USSA sanctioned events. And as such, the president was actually part of those meetings and those traveling expenses. So coming into her administration, she should have been well aware of that debt coming in. So that should not have factored into the decision to pull out of OSA. As the administrator of the budget, you are allowed to reallocate funds within the budget.
Just to inform you, you have 30 seconds.
Oh, groovy. Yeah, no, I'm finished.
Okay. In light of this new testimony, we will give the defendant a chance to cross-examine the testimony.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was for the testimony. Do I have 30 seconds to finish my cross-examination? For like 10 seconds?
What's the time, Your Honor?
There is no time left with the plaintiff.
Okay.
So we will give you a 5 minutes, 3 minutes. We'll give you 5 minutes to cross-examine the recent testimony that has been, or the witness testimony has been presented.
Thank you.
As clarification, this is just for the budgetary testimony that I've given, correct?
Yes, just only the testimony that you have presented, in light of the new evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. In terms of the testimony made by the plaintiff, I want to also note that during the winter budgeting cycle, when it was made aware to me the debt that the USSA relationship with ASOSU was causing, I did not further on my relationship as board member with USSA. I did not attend the spring meeting for USSA once it was made aware during the winter budgeting season what the debt was. I myself, as the National Asian Pacific American Student Coalition Chair, I did not make it to the Seattle, which is our last meeting, as well as the USSA New Student Congress, which happened in July.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that all?
I believe that is everything, sir.
Okay. Thank you. According to procedure now, the council, or in our case, the Senate as well, has a chance.
Actually, the Senate would like to move to give the Speaker of the House 3 additional minutes to complete his arguments, since deliberations, since time taken to deliberate on allowing the evidence cut into his cross-examination time. And that wasn't time that he got to spend arguing his case.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a second. Go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining?
Aye.
The motion passes. You'll be given additional 3 minutes, I believe. An additional 3 minutes for your cross-examination.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that motion as well. To finish off my cross-examination of the evidence, I will look at the last email conversation, correspondence that happened between the president and myself. Throughout the summer, I am not required to hold office hours, and as I am not on trial, I will lightly explain. I conducted work from home and at late night. I allowed for the executive staff to learn their new roles. As I was returning to the speaker position for my second year, it was not necessary for retraining. So my time was spent looking towards the new school year and figuring out ways that we could incorporate more students into our student congress. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We'll now go to the Senate. If the Senate has any questions for any evidence presented to the plaintiff or defendant, let's try and make this orderly. Does the Senate have any questions?
I have a question for the defendant.
Okay, please state your question.
Mr. Chairman, this question is for the defendant. Of the total $450,000 or $457,625.58, was that money that was rolled over from the previous administration for your executive budget for the summer until this week?
The budget has not came in for the new monies until this week. That is correct.
What was the balance of the former budget? Not the travel budget, but the entire budget. Was it $457,625.58?
For
Just the second page of your transaction details, right behind the travel budget of negative $58,000. It says transaction details excluding budget JVs.
Can you repeat your question, Senator Cushing?
So the transaction amount in the bottom right-hand corner beside grand total is $457,625.58. Is that the executive budget that you had to work with between June 1st when you officially took office and the time the new student fees come in?
No, this is what I was coining to as new monies that is rolling in November 2011.
Okay, I see it. I see it in the top left. All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
That's what she had until. That's what she got. I don't know why that's crossed out.
Seeing as there are no further questions from the Senate, we will now move on to closing statements. We'll have the plaintiff give his closing statement. You will have 3 minutes.
I guess it was.
Thank you. Lots of evidence was presented here today. Some of it was pointed, some of it was evidence dealing directly with the issue at hand. Was President Tonga Hopoi derelict in her duties to serve as on the board of directors as OSU representative for the students of Oregon State University? Was she in attendance in June? Was she in attendance in August? And was she in attendance in October? From the evidence we've seen here today, the answer to those 3 questions is no. As such, there has been a direct violation in her statutory obligations. Whether or not communication was beneficial, questionable throughout the summer, should not play into effect here. The House of Representatives does not meet until September when school starts. That very first meeting, this should have been brought to our attention and actions could have been taken. Further, the Senate also met throughout the summer. So if this was an action that needed to be worked with Senate, the President of the Senate, Soko Eith, shares an office right next door to the President and could have put it on the agenda to remove these duties from her statutory obligations. Neither of these actions were taken, and it's led us to this trial where we are at today. OSA is our government standing representation at the Capitol. They are the permanent standing representation. There is someone that works 40 hours at the Capitol. Yes, we have great students who work for our students here at Oregon State University, but as such, being students, they are not allowed the time to be at the Capitol 40 hours a week, as they're here to study first and represent students second. Further, I would like to take this opportunity, since we are at trial.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. To continue the work that ASOSU has done to further strengthen the legitimacy of our organization, to work together to further the strength of ASOSU as an organization and as one of the strongest student governments in the nation. Thank you.
Okay, the defense will now have their 3 minutes for closing statements.
Thank you, Your Honor. To be above what has currently happened, to be above a lot of the festering from, House to executive branch, to be above all of that, that's where I want to be. That's where Oregon State needs to be. In the end, with the emotional roller coaster that the OSU community has been through, now more than ever, ASOSU has the chance to define what community is at Oregon State University. Are we members of ASOSU at Oregon State a community that only believes in punitive justice at the highest extent? Or are we members of ASOSU at Oregon State, a community that understands everyone is human, open to make mistakes, and promotes learning from our mistakes than hurting from it? Do we not allow students the chance to appeal process and fair trial before OSU community leaders for classes, grades, and financial aid? Do we not provide appeal process for them to be heard once again, once they've made mistakes, once they've failed a course or lost their financial aid? We listen to them because that's the community we are. We keep each other together. In the end, I have stated time and time again, sir, I have learned my lesson. I don't know what measure of remorse is necessary for that to be accountable, for that to be submissive, but I've learned my lesson and I just want to go back to work. So I close tonight the hearing from articles of my impeachment in front of you all members of the court, the gallery, the community members that are filled in this room, with a statement asking the jury, as leaders, what kind of community do you want to be? What kind of OSU community do you want? Because this is where we make our stance as ASOSU. As members of Associate Students of Oregon State University, we are defining our community tonight. And I thank you for this opportunity to share my piece and to be heard in front of my peers. Thank you.
Right. That commences the proceedings of this trial. The Senate will now recess. We will now recess for the Senate for closed deliberation. We will now adjourn until the Senate has made their decision.
The trial for impeached ASOSU President Tonga Hopoi has now headed into the jury deliberation, but prior to this evening's trial, I was able to sit down with acting ASOSU President Soko Eith. I head to that interview now. If you could tell me just a little bit about the central issue around the trial for tonight and why the charges were brought against the now impeached ASOSU president.
So the impeachment against President Hopoi was around her decision to pull out of Oregon Student Association back in June. That decision was made by the cabinet, the executive cabinet, and they were done out of for negotiation purposes. So that way, when OSU does decide to go back, which we did go back on Saturday, that we would have something set from our campus that we would want the OSA to prioritize. Primarily, one of the main things that we want to accomplish is the Student Experience Center, which OSA did not have the ability to support or promote during that time. But now that we've come back, we have the ability to push for what we want and negotiate what we need to get done and work with other campuses across the state.
And how unique of a situation is it to have an impeached ASOSU president? Is this something that has happened in the past, and what was the outcome of that?
This is not the first time that a president has been impeached. I believe several years ago, there was a president that was caught with a DUI, and he had been previously pushed for an impeachment but wasn't fully impeached. So this is the first time that a president has been fully impeached under this new system. She is also the first president to be suspended from her duties. And so that itself is historical in that aspect. Plus, being that she is Tongan and all that other stuff too. So this is pretty much a first unique case for OSU, and it's never happened before.
And what are the options as far as what could the sentence be that is brought against her tonight?
There are several options. Some of the options is an injuncture or a censure, sorry, and then or straight up removal from office.
And can you explain a little bit what the difference is between an injunction and a censure?
They carry different weights. Primarily like the amount of time that she has to complete some certain task that the Congress decides that she needs to do, and then of course then there's the full removal from office, and then alleviation of her duties.
And do you have any expectations of what might happen tonight?
Not really. I just hope that both sides and all of our campus kind of comes together and understands that communications need to happen, and that in order for anything to accomplish and move forward from this, that we all come to the table with some sort of compassion for one another and a sense of charity, that we need to get things moving together as this campus, that we need to get our SEC together, that we need to secure our Pell Grants, and that whatever happens on campus right now after tonight is done with, and that we're all one university.
Thank you very much. This is Mackenzie Allen, and I am here with Michael Robb, the undergraduate representative for the ASOSU House of Representatives. Michael, if you could just tell me a little bit about the impeachment that happened way back when.
Well, originally I was, information had been brought to me by fellow representatives and Speaker Drew Hatlin, and actually this was at the end of the meeting, after the meeting of during the first week, that we had left OSA, and that the idea is for possible articles of impeachment. And from there, me and fellow representatives crafted the bill that currently we have saw the trial just recently. And from that, as everyone has seen from the trial, based off the evidence there, that was what was presented and what we found when we wrote the bill.
And if you feel comfortable, could you tell me what your vote was in terms of impeaching President Hopoi?
I voted for an actual impeachment.
And could you explain your rationale for that?
Well, from the evidence, and especially the executive order stating that it was an executive decree to remove ASOSU from OSA, that warranted a articles of impeachment due to the drastic nature of a unilateral removal from OSA and the importance of OSA to ASOSU and the student body at large.
And you voted for impeachment. What do you believe should be her sentencing at this trial?
Well, I believe that removal from office is far too harsh, that this dereliction of duty, though it is a dereliction of duty, is not warranting of a full removal. I believe either a censure, a public reprimand from the Senate, or an indictment, which is simply a censure with stipulations over a time period, would be sufficient, and I believe is what is warranted.
And what would you suggest those stipulations be?
Well, me and fellow House representatives have come up with a few of them. One of them, I believe, would be definitely having mandatory question time with both houses of Congress, which we have done over the last 2 years. Come in once a month. The president answers direct questions from both senators and representatives. The other one, another stipulation, would be getting a policy or plan to ensure that something of this nature wouldn't happen again for this administration and future administrations. So like during the summer when a new administration comes in and doesn't really know exactly what to do, some way to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Yeah, and it would really be actions along those lines, really to help get the relationship between ASOSU executive branch and legislative branch, try and mend that.
And do you think the impeachment of President Hopoi sets a precedent for future ASOSU presidents to possibly face the same action?
Well, the first thing is that for an impeachment, there would have to be an impeachable offense. And, well, I hope that this wouldn't set a precedence, because that would mean that the knowledge of these actions and the repercussions, that means future administrations didn't heed those warnings. So really, if this causes more impeachments in the future, then this obviously has failed.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. This has been Michael Robb, the undergraduate representative for the Associated Students of Oregon State University. Thank you. Thank you. I am now being joined by Luke Marcus, the Executive Director of Public Relations at ASOSU. Thank you for sitting down. I was wondering if you could just give me a quick overview of your opinion so far of the trial.
Okay. My opinion is that everything has come to where it is too hastily, starting with when the idea of the impeachment bill back in early October, or perhaps before that, when that idea came up, that's when things should have been taken with action should have been taken with more consideration and caution in regards to the people it's directly affecting, as well as the student government as a whole, and as well as the student body as a whole. And I think we've continued to see that lack of foresight tonight during the trial, with how disorganized certain aspects have been.
And then as far as the public relations aspect, do you think that this trial and the impeachment proceedings have changed public opinion of ASOSU?
I think that depends on sort of like what sphere you're talking about. I know it's certainly gotten to the news on a statewide level, which isn't necessarily a good thing. Within the structure of the ASOSU and the people who work there firsthand, I think that it's created sort of a divide on how we see our relationship with each other, so it's been detrimental in that effect.
And do you think, or if you got to sit on the jury, what would be your recommendation for her sentencing?
My recommendation would be for the dismissal of the charges, because I think that's the end goal that I think anybody would agree with, is that we need to find a way to resolve this in which everybody can start to work together again, rebuild each other's trust, and move forward for the benefit of the students. And I think that if we address this, the breach of the statutes as it is, person to person within a Senate meeting or a House meeting, that would suffice for what we need to do, but impeachment is unnecessary.
So you believe that this is an issue that should have been resolved in a closed session meeting and that a trial would not have been necessary? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that it should necessarily have been closed, but I think that things went too far too fast.
All right. And just if you could let me know, for the public relations aspect of it, you said that the opinion has been kind of going back and forth either way. Do you anticipate any change in public opinion if she is removed from office entirely?
Yeah, I think that it will have a negative effect on a lot of people's morale and their trust for the system in which ASOSU functions.
All right. Thank you very much. This has been Mackenzie Allen reporting here with Luke Marcus, who is the Executive Director of Public Relations at ASOSU. Thank you for your time, Luke.
Thank you.
This is Mackenzie Allen reporting for KBVR. I am currently right outside the MU Lounge, where earlier in this evening, the Senate hearing for ASOSU President Tonga Hopoi has been taking place, and we just got word that the jury is soon returning from deliberation, and we will have their verdict for you just as soon as it becomes available.
You may be seated. Has the Senate reached a verdict?
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
Please present the verdict.
Can you make sure your mic's on?
What?
Can you make sure your mic's on?
Working? Cool. We, the Senators of ASOSU, find the President M. Tonga Hopoi guilty of the charges stated in HB 0301, Articles of Impeachment. For these actions, we hereby issue the President M. Tonga Hopoi a formal censure.
This trial is adjourned.
Your Honor, at this point, I'd like to call for a mistrial.
A mistrial? On what grounds?
On grounds that the prosecutor spoke to the jury.
Point of clarification, hasn't the trial already adjourned?
Yes, sorry. The trial is already adjourned. You may leave.
Hey, can she file for 1 month? Up to until it's over. Well, you kind of called.
And the jury has returned with their verdict, and they found ASOSU President Tonga Hopoi guilty, and they decided to censor her with a formal censure. Although following the conclusion of the trial, President Hopoi did request that the charges be dismissed and that the judge rule a mistrial due to the prosecution speaking directly to the jury, but as the trial had already come to a close, the judge denied that request. This has been Mackenzie Allen reporting for KBVR at the ASOSU trial for impeached President Tonga Hopoi. Following the jury's guilty verdict, I am now being joined by Chris Van Drimlen, the ASOSU Administrative and Logistics Advocate. Thank you for agreeing to sit down. If I could just get from your perspective how you think the trial went in terms of the procedure, the organization, and the legality of the actual proceedings.
So as far as everything that led up to the trial, I have to say that as far as the procedure that's laid out in the Constitution and statutes, it was followed extremely well. It was followed extremely closely up until the trial tonight when the president, Tonga, tried to introduce evidence at the trial that should have been introduced 72 hours beforehand, which did cause some logistical hurdles that were in the end surmounted by a vote of the Senate to admit some of the evidence during the trial, but it caused some unfortunate confusion in the process. So I feel like, as far as the legalities, I feel like everything was followed pretty closely. As far as procedurally making things easy, maybe not so much tonight, but leading up to it, I feel like that was satisfied.
And then you mentioned the issue of her evidence not being presented 72 hours in advance. Do you think that there was an issue that she brought up that the evidence that was submitted to her by the prosecution was submitted to an email address she believed that she did not have access to?
Well, as far as there being an issue with that, she was suspended from all of her duties. However, it's also the duty of the Judicial Council chair to ensure that all parties have the correct information. So I don't think that there's any one person that can be pointed to as a disconnect point in that particular case.
And then as far as they came back with a guilty verdict and they voted to censure her, can you explain to me a little bit what that means exactly?
Right, of course. So censure is a formal legislative reprimand stating that the behaviors that are outlined in the impeachment bill are unacceptable to the Senate, but that aside from formally stating that those behaviors are unacceptable and should not happen in the future, they will take no further action. So she will be reinstated as ASOSU president as of tonight.
And to your knowledge, will she be required to reinstate her position with the Oregon Student Association?
So as per House Resolution 0302, I believe it was, yes, she will be required to reinstate representation at OSA. Now, she's not necessarily required to personally be that representative because the ASOSU statutes do say that the president can delegate any of their duties to another executive member as long as they're not delegating someone else's duties that are specifically outlined. So yes and no. Representation does have to be sent to OSA at this point, but it does not necessarily have to be Tonga herself.
And then following, obviously this has been a pretty well-publicized thing the last several weeks in and around campus. Do you think that this trial and the guilty verdict will set a precedent that in the future more presidents might face impeachment for rule violations?
Honestly, I don't think that that's likely. In fact, I think that this trial will make future rule violations less likely, in that presidents will be looking out for what they're supposed to do, which in the end was kind of the point of this verdict. Was to state that the ASOSU Congress finds these kinds of actions unacceptable. I don't feel like just an impeachment makes more impeachments more likely. There have been impeachment attempts on several ASOSU presidents within recent memory, none of them successful in removing that person from office. It simply depends on the actions of the president, the perception of those actions by the Student Congress, and then the climate of the discussion.
And then in the proceedings, President Hopoi brought up 2 other cases of past ASOSU presidents that had faced impeachment hearing. Can you explain a little bit what the difference was between the past impeachments and this event tonight?
Right. So I think that it bears mentioning that the impeachment process looked completely different as of 3 years ago and before. A new constitution and statutes were passed by the students that outlines this process, which I feel like gives more time for the discussion around impeachment, for people to build their cases, and just in general to cool off a little bit from the initial discussion. So those instances were around perceived lack of the president doing their job, in that they were in an internship in Washington, D.C. over the summer, back when the ASOSU statutes did state that the president had to be here over the summer. It no longer states that anyone has to be here over the summer, so that has been an area of confusion around this. The other one was when the ASOSU president received a citation for driving under the influence while ASOSU president, so the charges were conduct unbecoming of the ASOSU president.
All right. And thank you very much for agreeing to sit down with us. I know this has been a very long night for everyone involved. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of your evening. This has been Mackenzie Allen reporting for KBVR at the ASOSU trial of impeached President Tonga Hopoi. Thank you for joining us this evening, and good night.